Okay, guys, so we're back again. We're recording. So what we left off on, I guess I'll go ahead and reshare this again. Okay. So what we left off on was this question of why doesn't it show us more information? So you're trying to imagine that you're a user on your company's network. You're trying to get into the root access on a server. You have access. You know the password. If you were sitting there on that computer, um, if you were sitting there on that computer in the other room, you would be allowed to log into this using root access with the root password, like using a switch user command. And yet, here you are trying to log in through SSH, and it tells you permission denied. Please try again. You're like, oh, I think maybe I typed the wrong password. So you try again with the password that you're pretty sure you know it is. Permission denied. Well, did I do the wrong password? I don't understand. Why doesn't it tell you more information? Why doesn't it say? Why do you think it does not say root access has been not allowed? Root access is not permitted on this device. Something like that. Why do you think? No one gonna answer? Can you guys hear me? Is my audio coming through? All right, so what do you think? Anyone, what do you think? Why do you think it is that we don't get more information? Why is it being so secretive? Exactly. No, exactly. If, let's say, when someone tries to log in through SSH to the root account, it could be someone like me or you who's actually supposed to be doing this, but it might be a hacker, right? It might be a bad actor, a bad guy, trying to get into the root access on a desktop, on a server. And if they type in a password, whether it's the right password or not, if they just get the permission denied message, they'll probably think, oh, that's just not the right password, and they might try a different password. But if they are given the message, root access not allowed, they'll give up, right? They'll say, oh, well, I'll have to figure out some other way to get into this server, and they'll go off and try other things. But if they're given just a simple message that looks a lot like a wrong password message, they might keep trying to go down this wrong path, a path that won't get them into the computer. They might keep trying that over and over again with no success. All right. So again, if we give hackers more information, they'll know, oh, they don't allow root access. I'm going to find some other way to get in there. Okay. All right, so that's why that's a good that good thinking about why if it's a hacker might be giving them more information than we want to. Okay. All right. I will say this. Even though root access is not allowed directly like this, there is still a way to get in as root through kind of a back door. And if stuff was set up when working on my computer right now, I could show you how that's done. But right now, unfortunately, it's not. So okay, so that's SSH. Okay. Again, if I can ever figure out how to get networking done on these virtual machines, then I can help you out. Okay, so let's go chapter 10. Let's talk about logs. So we'll do a quick discussion. It won't last for very long, but I do want to just kind of discuss a little bit about how logs are analyzed and stored and how we can read them. Okay. So the idea is we want to have a record of events that happen. So for example, I think we talked about this before when we talked about the super user, the root user, and how we can use that sudo command to run commands. Now remember, switch user, SU, makes us know the root password to be able to run commands, right? As the root user, we can log into the root from the terminal, from our bash shell, using the root password. But if we use the sudo command, we don't provide the root password, we provide our own password, right? So if you're logged in as student, for example, and you run the sudo command, and you try to run a command as the root user using sudo, it'll ask you for your password. It'll ask you for the student password. And the reason for this, the reason why it doesn't ask you for the root password, is because when you run as a sudo, you don't have to know the root password to do that, but it does want to log that, keep a record of that you ran that command. I think we did talk about this during the sudo time, that when we store in that log, student user ran this command as sudo on this date, so that if something happened, like if they use the sudo command to lock an account, if they use the sudo command to delete an account, if they use the sudo command to send something that was not good, that was a virus, or just whatever, if they use the sudo command to do something bad or to cause problems, we want to have a record of that. All right? So the way so that's one of the reasons we might log stuff, is to have a record of events that happened. Okay? Here's some different log files that are important, right? So most of our syslog messages are stored in the messages, var log. Notice they all are in the location var log something, some file name. Okay. Var log secure is about security and authentication. Mail log can tell us what happened with the mail server, things that happened with the mail server. All right. Cron, the word cron, chronology, chronometer. These are all, I don't remember what the root language is, but it's the word for time, right? So it's about the periodically executed things, right? Boot log is messages related to system startup. So these are some different log files that are important, okay? So that's just kind of a bird's eye overview of some of the log files that are in the system. Okay. So that quiz, and again, that quiz, just like the exercises in the lab, are all available on the class materials folder. Okay, so some different priorities, some of that are going to be in the syslog files. So what type of things? So some of the levels, right? So 0 is going to be your highest level. Like it's basically ranked. Low numbers have a higher priority than high numbers. So just some different things. So basically, it's down to just informational. Just, some stuff happened, but it's not. You don't have to take notice of this. Up to all the way up to system is unusable, where you just can't even do anything, right? All right. Let me get into more informative things. So, okay, so how to analyze an entry in the syslog, in a syslog file. So if we look at what some of the information that we'll have a timestamp. So when did this thing happen? The host, so which server or which desktop did this come from? Right? Where was the message sent? Oh, sorry, from where was the message sent? Okay. And then the program, so this was what they were running. And then the actual message that was sent. So this is the informative part of what happened. So when, from where, program or process, and then the message. So in this, what happened was, on February 11th at 8:11 in the evening, somebody tried to log into localhost using SSH, and they didn't have the right password for the student account. And so that's what we can learn from this particular message. Right. Now we can look at the last so many messages. Right? We may not want to look at the entire file. I mean, if we look at the whole file, the whole log file, right, it'll be quite large. I mean, you notice that like a lot of stuff happens, in a computing system very quickly. So we might not want to look at the whole file, but we might just want to look at the last X number of events that happen. So we can use that tail command to be able to look at the last X number of events that happened that got put into this, for example, the secure file. All right, so we'll see a couple of SSHD. Now again, here, accepted password for root. So even a successful login, right? Successful login gets noted in the secure file. So not just the bad stuff, not just the stuff that we need to say, oh, some bad stuff happened. Even the okay stuff, even the stuff that's like good, it's informative. Hey, somebody logged in. Okay. All right. Now, we can use the logger command to put a message into a log file to log it. Okay. So we might say, if we want to send to the boot, to send a message to record it in the boot file. So we use the logger command. All right. And what do we want it to say? Okay, so a log entry created on server X. Right, so root at server X logs something to the boot log file. Okay, I think on the next page it shows that we can. Nope, I guess not. I was wanting to see. Unfortunately, as before, the CentOS is not running, not coming up, so I can't show you an example of this, unfortunately, but this would be a way to send that message. I would like to show you what it looks like, but unfortunately, you cannot. Yeah. Okay. Guided exercise. Oh, maybe it doesn't here. Maybe it doesn't the guided exercise. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Okay, so here we're using the logger command to generate a debug message test, right, on our server X. So then when we look at the debug messages here, notice, okay, so the date that this document was created, February 13th, this was when this message got sent. It was generated from localhost by root, and this is what the message was. So that's that message there. All right. Okay. All right. So we can use the journal control command to show the oldest log entry, starting with the oldest log entry from the full system journal. So all the stuff that's been going on. Okay. So one thing you'll see when you run this is it highlights in bold text messages of priority notice or warning. So things that are just, you know, normal stuff. The starting session of user root, started session of user root, you know, all these things are just informative. But a bold thing is going to a bold thing is going to say these are priorities, these are warnings, these are problems. Okay, and the higher priority are highlighted in red, even so. Even a colored notice for how to understand this. We can also, if this will just show you the full system journal. Here, if we just wanted to show like the last 10 log entries, we could do the -n. Notice that -n, just like with tail and just like with head, is telling us how many of something we want to see. The last n lines, in this case the n log entries, which is also the number of lines from the journal. Okay. If we wanted to see only the ones that are priority or error, we can add, you know, what priority do we want to see? Okay, so journal control, priority, error. So error and above, anything that's error or worse, right? We are going to see those. We don't want to see all the inform, because, you know, again, for the most part, most things that happen on a system are normal things. Right? There's not a lot of errors, not a lot of critical things that happen in a system by comparison. So we might want to filter those out, the normal stuff out. Okay, and we can do that. All right. Okay. So we can use that -f command to continue to see as they get written to the journal. We can keep seeing them, so it'll keep updating and show us more and more. It'll keep running and show us more and more. Some other things where we can look at journal entries that were recorded today, or between a certain date. If we know that we're looking for something that happened on a certain day between two specific times, we can do that. Verbose. So up till now, what we've talked about is just very like one-line journal entries that just kind of give you some basic information of what's gone on. Here, the verbose option will tell us a lot more information about those entries. Okay, if we want to look at a particular event and we want to look at a lot more detailed information about that particular event, we can use that verbose option. All right. Yeah, you can look through some of this about how this _com is what is the command that was done, what is the executable process that was executed, and so forth. Some of what these useful options are. Okay. All right. So here we could also say, you know, I want to see all journal entries that are related to the SSH service that has a particular process ID. Okay, and again, this will show me all the the journal entries for that. If I know that there was a problem over the past few days or something related to that service, I can look up that particular service. All right. Okay. So go ahead and also, go through the guided exercise. Again, these are all available on the class materials folder. Now, we might want to preserve it. We might want to take that journal, the journal listing of all the events that have happened on a system, and we might want to store it so that we can have access to it, later. Right? Because, right, by default, the journal will not be allowed to get larger than 10% of the file system. Right? So basically, what we don't want is we don't want a log that's so big that it ends up taking up too much of our system. We want to leave the system data space. We want to leave the system available to be able to have more meaningful things like files and programs and stuff like that. Right? And so we might want to store this journal file like in a permanent file so that those older entries can get wiped out, can get removed from that journal file, but we'll still have access to them in another place. So you might say, okay, so this command, for example, if we say, okay, I'm going to show, you know the pipe here, okay, I'm going to show the first two lines of the journal control output. So remember, journal control would output to the screen. Instead, we're pipelining it to the head command and saying, okay, I just want to show the first two lines. Okay. And then we can also, so what we can do is we could create a folder, a directory called journal. Okay. And then we can make it to where the root systemd journal, now you should know what this does, this ch own, right? So it changes the user owner of this file to be root. It changes the group owner to be this, the systemd journal group. Okay. And then this permission change, you guys should know what this does as well, right? So I forget about the 2 for now, but the 755. So what does that happen? What does that mean? The user owner gets gets full permission. The group and other owner gets read and execute permission. Okay. All right. Now we're going to send this signal, right? We're going to send this to this process to get to reboot the make it persistent, right? So now what we can do is we could say, hey, I only want to see log messages since the last reboot of the system. Okay, so this -b can do that. So again, one of the things that we're talking about in all this, one of the reasons why what we're talking about right now is important, is these journal files and these log files are so large, so massive, that sometimes we only want to see certain things. And if we just look at the whole file, we may have a hard time finding exactly what it is we're looking for. But in this particular situation, what we've now allowed ourselves to do is we have allowed ourselves to only see the messages since the last boot, meaning the last time the computer came up. right? So we're only seeing recent messages. Okay. Okay. And we also can do like with this -1, so we can say output from the previous boot, or the one before that, or the one before that. Okay. All right. So these are all like where we can say what happened the last time. So especially this might be helpful if something happened towards the end of the previous shutdown that maybe caused a shutdown, an unexpected shutdown or something like that, that we could see what happened towards the end of the last time. All right. So that's why this is important. That's why this since previous boot or since current boot is important. All right. Okay, one thing, let's talk a little bit about time. Why this is important, because why this is in the logs chapter. The whole reason for why we put this in the logs is because one of the important parts of logs, one of the important parts of maintaining logs, is that one of the key pieces of information is the date, right? Is the date and time that something occurred. Right? So we want to make sure that our time is accurate, because we don't want to see something from a log that says it happened in, that happened last month when it actually happened yesterday, or that happened. What is more likely is that it may say that something happened an hour ago when in actuality it just happened minutes ago. And the reason why that is because of time zones and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we know, okay, what is our system? What is the universal time? What is our current local time? Right? What time zone are we in? Some of these key pieces of information so that we can know. Because if you look at a log for a system and it says that it happened at, let's say right now it's 11:12, and let's say the log says that this event happened at 11:11, and we're thinking, oh, that happened a minute ago, but it actually happened but the system clock was set for China, let's say, for example. So it actually happened a few hours ago, right? Then we could be really kind of left wondering with some wrong information, left wondering about what happened, right? We might be trying to track down some event that happened a minute ago, but in actuality it was something that happened hours ago, so I might be looking in the wrong place. All right. So now we don't have every possible city in the entire world listed as time zones, right? But we can see what a database of known time zones is available using the list time zones. Right? I believe in Turkey, Istanbul is the one that's listed for Turkey. I don't know if they have another city available in the database. Okay. All right. So we can set our time zone based on something we found in the database, and it'll change our time zone to be that. We can set the current time. Right? This is, if you if you were to set it manually, this would be how we could set the time. Now, the moment you hit enter on this command, that's when that time will be set to that. Okay, so you could change the system clock in this way. Right. By the way, the time is specified in this format, right? Where either the date or the time can be left off. So, for example, we kept the same date as before, but we changed the time to be this. NTP synchronization is basically where you connect to a server to be able to get up to date time settings. Okay, I believe most of us have that set up on most of our devices, and they're like on my phone, on this computer. These are automatically set. The time is automatically set based on time zone. Okay. All right. So the cronid service is, we talked about this before. We talked about this as an example of as an example in the section on starting and stopping services, right? Managing services and services and daemons, right? And this cronid service is what is used to keep local hardware on track, like keep it in with the current time. So it contacts the NTP servers, it synchronizes the date and time so that it makes sure to keep that clock going. Okay. If there's no network connectivity, if you're disconnected from a network, right, then basically the cronid service keeps track of any drift that may be going on, right, and keeps it going, keeps it updated. Okay. All right. So, I mean, basically the cronid service is what's used to keep the system clock correct and synchronized with the server. Is there anything else I wanted to? I don't think there was much else I wanted you to have to know from here. So cronid keeps the system clock, and all this is important. All this maintaining current date and time and making sure that things are correct on the system clock is so that when we have an entry in a log, we know that we can have a reasonable assurance that the time that it happened, the time and date that this event happened, is accurate, is accurately being recorded. Right. So again, this is so that when we see an event that happened that we want to figure out why did this occur, if someone used the sudo command to do something and we want to know when did that occur, we want to make sure that we are pretty accurate as to when it happened. All right. So for example, if someone used a sudo command to lock an account, and the log records that it happened a long time ago. The log records that it happened last week, but in actuality it happened the day before. Then we may spend a lot of time investigating last week, right, and end up not finding out the truth of what happened. Right? So we want to make sure that our logs are accurate. And so time is a big part of that. Time of when something happened is a big part of that. Okay. So these guided exercises for both 9 and 10, I believe you can. Let me make sure about 9. No, not 9. For 10, the guided exercises in the lab for 10, you can do that with your virtual machine, or if you have Linux running on the computer you're currently on, or on some other computer that you have. You can do this chapter 10, logs and lab, activities in lab on that without needing to network two computers together. So again, I apologize for, let me get out of here. All right. I apologize again for not having the virtual machine up and running. And so I will figure out what happened with that and try to get that working again. And we'll have it up for next week. Okay. So are there any questions related to the last part about the logs and stuff? Are there any comments? Nope. Okay, guys. Well, again, sorry that this class is ending so early because I really do wish I could do more practical examples with you and show you some examples. So we'll have it up and running next week, and I'll see you then. Oh, one other thing. We next week will be the last class before the midterms. So what we'll do is we will spend some time next week doing a midterm review. Okay, so we'll continue on with the next topic, but we will also do a midterm review time next week. Okay? Thank you guys. Have a good weekend, and I will see you next week.